All right, hello and welcome, everybody. First, I got to say, God bless America. Today, we're going to be going over Vivek Ramaswamy on the Hannity show in high speed.
And earlier today in Syracuse, New York, Biden made a very bold and very obvious false claim that you have to hear to believe.
And it's clear we have the strongest economy in the world. That's a fact.
What planet are you living on?
Okay, the strongest economy in the world. Obviously, he's not living in your reality. I guess Joe didn't see the GDP numbers this morning, but former President Donald Trump, he certainly did, and here's what he had to say.
As you probably have heard, some very big things have happened, but the biggest seems to be that the GDP just announced it's all the way down to 1.6%, and it's heading south. It's going to get worse. Gas prices in California were just also announced at $7.60. Gasoline is going way up. Energy costs are going way up. And the stock market is, in a sense, crashing. The numbers are very bad. This is bidenomics. It's catching up with them. And it's a shame, but it's all the way down to 1.6. And I'll tell you.
Got to say, God bless President Trump as well.
Nobody thought that would be possible. And it looks like it's heading down from there.
Now, that is an accurate, realistic, and true picture of the economy. Let's take a look at the numbers, shall we? Anemic, 1.6% GDP growth, as President Trump pointed out. Plus, 1.7 million full-time jobs have now disappeared in the past 5 months alone, according to government data. Look at this. Mortgage rates, no chance of them going lower by the Fed, so they're going back higher, over 7%, making homes even less affordable. And get this, and this should take you, every American needs to hear me closely here. 26% of Americans, 26% of people you know, tell Gallup they have struggled to afford food during the past year. And here's another bad part. And the worst, we are the worst among all G7 countries. Great job, Joe. The country's starving. And
flat out lie. He put at the beginning that we're the best economy. Flat out lie.
70% of respondents to the latest Bloomberg poll say the economy is on the wrong track. It is no wonder that Donald Trump is leading Biden by very healthy margins in nearly every swing state, according to the Bloomberg poll that came out yesterday. Look at these numbers.
And just because they're saying, like, Trump won the last election, allegedly, and I know he did, but the Republicans need to be registered and ready to vote, because it's not going to be a landslide like everybody thinks. All these Democrat states are allowing the illegal aliens to vote. They don't have voter ID, and it's not going to be a landslide, so it's your responsibility to vote.
He is ahead in Wisconsin, Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Nevada, North Carolina. Anyway, here with reaction, former 2024 presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy. You know, I lived paycheck to paycheck, Vivek, in the early part of my adult life. I never felt poor, but in reality, I didn't have any money, any extra money, that's for sure, and drove, you know, a $200 van or a $350 Ford Maverick that I'd fixed myself. Going out to eat, that was a joke. I couldn't afford fast food. I made my own food every day. But this is our fellow 26% of Americans struggling to put food on their table. And Joe Biden saying it's the best economy ever? How out of touch can he be?
I think he's wildly out of touch, Sean. And the reality is most Americans aspire to the American dream that you and I have lived. My parents came to this country with no money 40 years ago. I founded multi-billion-dollar companies. And I'm worried that American dream isn't going to exist for our kids and their generation. And the numbers coming out now just back that up under this administration. You on one hand see inflation ticking back up. On the other hand, GDP growth has flattened. There's a word for that. It's called stagflation. So put Jimmy Carter out of the White House. And I think that Joe Biden is now at risk for good reason of being the Jimmy Carter.
Between stagflation and shrinkflation, I don't know how most people are doing it. It's crazy.
Of our day. But the reality is this. Prices have gone up. Mortgage rates and interest rates have gone up to supposedly combat that inflation, and yet wages have remained flat. So no matter what the bidenomics professors say, Americans at home, especially Americans struggling to make ends meet, struggling to live the American dream, understand the impact that's had on them. And it's no surprise you see the poll numbers where they are, with the economy and the border, not culture war issues, the economy and the border at the number one and number two concern for all Americans. And I think that's where it should be.
Let me get your reaction to these Bloomberg swing state polls, because I think they're, if I'm Joe Biden, I'd be pretty alarmed. You got Trump, Wisconsin, 48-44, Arizona, 49-42, Georgia, 49-43, Pennsylvania, up by 1, North Carolina, 51-41, up by 10, Nevada, 51-43. The only state he was down in, swing state, I'm not even sure I buy that part, because I think that Michigan sent a pretty loud message that scared the hell out of Joe Biden. It scared him enough to give up and basically surrender in the war on terror and take a knife, shove it in Israel's back and twist it at a time when they're fighting their war against radical Islamic terrorism. But if I'm Joe Biden and I'm looking at those polls, what am I thinking?
Well, look, I think that for Republicans, look at these polls. Here's my number one caution. Complacency is not an option. I remember that red wave that was supposed to come in 2022 that never came.
Well
and I think part of the reason why is we grew complacent. And so I think that we can't be complacent this year. I refuse to see that play out in 2024. We have to stand for our own agenda. We can't just be criticizing Biden and looking at the poll numbers and patting ourselves on the back. Compete on the same axis that the Democrats have competed. Don't like early voting? Too bad. Compete on that axis until we can win and actually change the rules to be what they should be. And so that, I think, is the number one risk. And Sean, I know there's a little even...
When he says change the rules, that's get rid of the illegal immigrants. You have to have voter ID, voter verification. It's the most important thing in our country. That's what our country was founded on. One person, one vote.
Controversial to say, but I would not rule out that the nominee is still going to remain Biden if these numbers continue to persist through the summer. These people have always been one step ahead. And the other thing is this cannot just be a 50.1 margin election. First of all, we need decisive mandates to have both the Senate and the House decisive control. And let's be honest, a landslide minus some shenanigans is still going to be a decisive victory. So that's the kind of margin we need to be shooting for. Complacency isn't an option. So I don't think looking at these poll numbers and cheering right now is particularly helpful or constructive.
In Pennsylvania, he's looking at you. Trump only has a 1-point lead. Y'all need to get registered and start voting.
Get down to work, actually deliver victory, actually state what we stand for without just worrying about the other side. That's how we're going to win this election.
What we stand for, voting early, voting by mail, that's an important message. Matching, surpassing ballot harvesting efforts of the Democrats.
And just so we're clear, mail-in voting, the only reason that was ever created was for soldiers overseas could still vote. That way, if you were deployed overseas, you didn't lose your vote. That's the only reason we have mail-in voting. And ever since coronavirus, the Democrats have made it mandatory. Like if you can't get out and vote, you don't deserve it. The only people that should have mail-in voting is our soldiers that are deployed overseas.
I'm going to add one other issue, and people get mad at me, but I'll take the heat. You better understand where the country is on abortion. I believe the repeal of Roe v. Wade had a big impact on 2022. Republicans have got to understand where the electorate is on that issue, which I would say is either first trimester, Dobbs, 15 weeks. And I know that a lot of my pro-life friends get angry when I say it, but I believe that's true. Do you agree?
Look, I think that leaving it to the states is the way to go. President Trump adopted that position. So the 10th Amendment says stick to the Constitution. And I think it's both the truth and a winning message.
And the House out in Arizona deserves a lot of praise for having the courage to step up and get that job done out there. Now the Senate out there, I think, has their job to do. All right, Vivek Ramaswamy, thank you. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey.
All right, everybody, that's today's video. If you like it, like it. If you like it a lot, subscribe. High Speed News. More to come. Thanks.